So good night, everyone. My name is Leanne, and I am employed with the Office of the Attorney General and Ministry of Legal Affairs. So hence the reason I'm able to give you all some information tonight on registration of business, right? At the ministry, well, we are responsible. I work in the company's registry, and that section is responsible for registration of all businesses, companies, and non-profit organizations in Trinidad and Tobago, right? Business registration, company registration, non-profit organization. So I'll just touch briefly. Well, I was told I was supposed to speak about non-profit organizations, right?
Yes.
So I'll just touch briefly on business and company and the non-profit organizations. Businesses, well, the main difference between a business and a company is that as a business, a sole trader or a partnership, there are different types of businesses, sole traders or partnership, right? As a sole trader, you are your business. Whereas as a sole trader or being a partner in a company, in a business, in a firm, sorry, in a partnership, you are your business as opposed to a company, which is an entity that stands on its own. So really and truly, what that really means is a company where it affects you where liability is concerned. As a business owner, you are your business, so therefore all debts incurred by the business falls directly to you, as opposed to as a company, where the company now is as that entity that stands on its own, the liability of any debts incurred, if the company is to be sued, the responsibility falls on the company itself. Within a company, there are different, in terms of the liability, there are different things such as limited by shares, limited by guarantee, unlimited shares. Limited by shares meaning that as a shareholder in a company, your responsibility for liability is limited by the amount of shares that you hold in the company, right? So basically, that's the difference, the main difference between a company and a business, right? So I'll go now into the non-profit organizations, right? Which is another form of another entity, is a form of company. We call it a non-profit company, right? Because in Trinidad and Tobago, companies need to be incorporated, right? Incorporated meaning that incorporation basically refers to the process of registering a company, whether it's a profit company or a non-profit company, right?
Okay. Leanne, sorry, just before you continue, this is for our participants. If you have any questions, just type the questions in the chat, right? So that after the presentation, we would put forward the questions and hopefully we will get answers for all of them. So if you have any questions, just type it in the chat while Leanne speaks, and then we will get to them after.
Right? Yes, so as I was saying, incorporation basically means to register. So it's the process of registering a company, as I said, whether it be profit or a non-profit company. So the main difference, well, what is a non-profit organization, right? Non-profit organizations, or as I said in this case, non-profit companies, are organizations that do not earn profits for its owners. All of the money earned or donated to a non-profit organization is used in pursuing the organization's objectives and keeping it running. In a non-profit organization or company, income is not distributed to the group's members, directors, or officers, right? So that's basically a definition of what a non-profit organization or company is. The main difference between a non-profit and a profit company is number one, the purpose, right? While the aim of a profit organization or company is to maximize profits and forward these profits to the company's owners and or shareholders, a non-profit organization's aim is to provide a society's need, right? Many non-profit organizations are charitable, mainly charitable organizations, which people use to give back to the community, right? Number two, income and funding. Another key element that makes a non-profit company or organization different to that of a profit company is that the company's income is never distributed to any owners, but it is recycled back into the non-profit's public benefit mission and activities, right? So basically what it's saying is that persons who are, let's say, volunteers or members in a non-profit company, they are not paid. Any income that comes into the nonprofit is recycled or is used towards the running of the nonprofit or the purpose for which the nonprofit was registered. Number three, instead of maximizing profits, which means maximizing revenues while minimizing costs, they are more concerned with ensuring the revenue is greater than the cost. This ensures that the nonprofit can still provide the society's needs. Number four, nonprofit organizations have no owners, but are run by volunteers or members who handle the day-to-day running and operation of the organization, as opposed to a profit company that is owned by the shareholders and directors. So in a profit company, the owners of the company are the shareholders, right? And the day-to-day running of the company is done by persons who are called directors. So the main difference with the non-profit organization and the profit organization is that a non-profit doesn't really have owners because there are no shareholders. They are directors who will control the day-to-day running of the company. However, there's no profit involved, so therefore no shareholders. So the company itself doesn't have any owners, right? Number five, the main difference between a profit and a non-profit is taxation, right? And many non-profit organizations are exempt from taxes. Typically, organizations that fall under the category of non-profit are tax-exempt charities or other types of public service organizations, and as such, they are not required to pay most taxes. And I think that's one of the main differences between a profit and a non-profit company, where the non-profits are exempt from taxes, right? So examples of non-profit organizations, as we refer to them at the ministry as NPOs. Examples of NPOs include churches, charitable organizations, associations, and foundations, etc. Right? In Trinidad and Tobago, NPOs are governed by the Non-Profit Organization Act of 2019. What this means in 2019, there were some amendments to the Companies Act. Now, the Companies Registry, companies, businesses in Trinidad and Tobago are governed by the Companies Act. In 2019, there was an amendment to the act to include the NPO Act, and it came into operation on the 14th of June 2019, and this governs the registration and supervision of non-profit organizations in Trinidad and Tobago. So according to the NPO Act, it gives the definition of an NPO as a body of persons, whether incorporated or unincorporated. And as I said, incorporation refers to the process of registering. So incorporated, registered, unincorporated, not registered. There are lots of organizations that are run that are not registered, right? And they are required to be registered by law. So under the NPO Act, a body of persons, whether incorporated or unincorporated, which is established primarily for the promotion of a patriotic, religious, philanthropic, charitable, educational, cultural, scientific, literary, historical, artistic, social, professional, fraternal, sporting, or athletic purpose, or some other useful object, and raises or disburses funds for that purpose or object, is referred to as a non-profit organization, right? So as I said, the NPO Act governs the registration of all non-profits in Trinidad and Tobago. And that amendment was made in 2019. So it's where the government has now put things in place where persons who run nonprofit organizations must make their finances, what's the word I'm looking for? Must make it a bit, well, the government needs to know then where the finances are coming from, how they operating, and these things. So they've put into place different forms that need to be filled out and submitted to the company's registry, where the nonprofit will disclose where they get funds from, how the funds are used, and these sort of things, right? So basically, that is the main differences between a profit company and a nonprofit organization. Any person or any group of persons who probably have a common interest in meeting the society's needs as it's stated can register a nonprofit organization. And as I stated, there are no owners, funds or the income, which is mostly gained from donations, sometimes government subventions, these things are used for the purpose for which the nonprofit was registered, right? And that is basically what a nonprofit organization is. And the main difference between a profit company and a nonprofit company, as I said, the purpose for which they are registered, income and funding, the maximizing of profits, that's the main difference. There are no owners, and nonprofit organizations are exempt from business taxes and these taxes that profit companies then would have to or are liable to pay to the government, towards the government. So that's basically it for me tonight. I don't know if anybody has any questions that they would like me to answer. I'm seeing.
Yes, we do have some questions in the chat. So let me head to the first one. Can you explain what is a deed of covenant and how important it is for a charity to have it?
A deed of covenant. Now this would fall under a deed of covenant is something that wouldn't fall under the registration aspect of a nonprofit, which is what I will be able to assist with in terms of a registration. Again, at the ministry, we are responsible. We have the company's registry, we have the land registry. What I can do is usually all these, any deed would fall under the land registry, and I can find out exactly what is the deed of covenant and how it relates to the nonprofit organizations, and I can provide the information at a later time, right? Somebody's asking what are some.
I think they were asking what are some examples
Of nonprofit.
Yes, right? And you did mention a few.
So churches, I said churches, right? Charitable organizations. I said there are a lot of organizations that come together to give back to the community. So they would collect donations, and along you see a lot of it around Christmas time, where persons go out into the communities and give back to those that are less fortunate. Sometimes coming down like to the end of the August vacation, where persons come together and they will give back to school children, providing the necessary books and these things, right? So people register these organizations, right, in order to be able to officially do what they have to do or operate in. Sometimes a lot of nonprofit organizations depend heavily on donations being given. And sometimes you may go to a company, let's say, for instance, I know a lot of people who go to PriceSmart and these places, grocery stores, and they would want to see an official registration document in order to know that what they are donating is actually being used for the purpose for which persons ask for it, right? So, as I said, charitable organizations, foundations, sometimes you will see like Cancer Society, let's say different ailments and diseases that people suffer from. Somebody may have a family member who would have died due to some type of ailment, and they now will come and register a foundation in that person's name in remembrance, one, and also to bring awareness to that type of illness or disease, right? Associations. Sometimes you have, I know people come and they register, clubs for like different types of vehicles, sporting organizations, football clubs are also non-profit organizations. There are some recreational clubs. You see these recreational clubs around, and some of them also fall under non-profit organizations, right? So those are just like some brief examples of the main types of non-profit organizations that people register. All right.
Okay. I have a question. So a company, right? Can a company have an NGO associated directly with the company, or is it that only individuals can register a NPO?
No, a company can have an association or a foundation associated with it, right? However, it will be separate and apart from the company. So it's a different entity altogether.
Okay.
So yeah, it will be two different things, because a profit and non-profit can be operating under the same banner, under the same organization and the same entity then.
Right. So let's say a company wants to, let's say, do a sport club for the community that they are in. So
Yes.
they could register a
Yes.
non-profit, and then the company themselves could be the major contributor financially into that non-profit.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. I'm seeing someone asking, can an NPO sell products?
Oh, before that question, we had one. How would you categorize a cooperative?
Cooperative. Cooperative would not be categorized under a non-profit, right? Just now, hold on.
And examples of cooperatives would be like, well, I know we have agricultural cooperatives.
Credit unions fall under cooperative societies also, yeah. I think it would depend on exactly the operations and what they involved in, right?
Okay.
As class under, because then they may have a cooperative, but they're not operating on a profit basis then, right? So I guess it would depend on the operations of the cooperative.
Okay. Right. So the next question was, can an NPO sell products? Because I know we mentioned that they might mainly function on donations. But can an NGO basically sell things for profit? But just as you said, all the money, all the revenue raised is just recirculated within the system to achieve whatever the objective
goal.
is.
Exactly. Yeah, because all right, let's say now they can sell products, right? But it's the sale of the products now will be classed under like a fundraiser. So you're raising funds now to meet a specific goal or a specific need, right? Okay. So let's say, yeah, you have a non-profit organization and you decide to have a barbecue. or something like that, or you're selling cakes or something like that. It's for fundraising purposes, as I said, to be used within the organization.
Right.
Right? How do you classify the organization that needs to be registered for HOAs to function in gated community? Can the person state exactly what they mean by HOA?
Yes, that would be beneficial to all of us. What is an homeowners association?
Yeah, it needs to be registered for homeowners. Well, a homeowners association again would be classed as a non-profit, right? Now, as a group of persons living in a gated community, they may have, for whatever specific reason, they want to register a homeowners association, right? That would be a non-profit because, well, it's meeting a specific need within the community, right? And I don't see a homeowners association like generating profits in any way, right? Some nonprofits also, when they are members, they have membership dues. That's how a nonprofit can run also, eh? So you have fundraisers, you have donations, you have membership dues, different things. So a homeowners association, as I said, will basically be under a non-profit organization. Even though there may be members who contribute membership dues, it will still fall under a non-profit organization.
Right. Going back a bit, I have a question regarding the ownership. So we said a non-profit doesn't really have an owner, right? So I'm assuming they would have, if like let's say directors.
Yes.
Right? So how would that function? Okay, like is it that there is a minimum number of directors that is necessary for a non-profit, right? What really are the responsibilities of the directors, and how does that whole leadership dynamic work within the NPO?
So yes, the bylaw and NPO is required to have a minimum of 3 directors, right? And they can have any amount as a maximum, right? But they cannot have less than 3 persons who are directors in the company. Now, the directors are the persons who are responsible, as I said, for the day-to-day running of the company. It is the same also in a profit company, right? The main difference there, though, is that a profit company will have shareholders who are the owners of the company, and the directors are the persons who run the company on a day-to-day basis, right? So in the non-profit, there are directors, they run the company on a day-to-day basis. Non-profits now, they can have their board of directors. And within that now, they will decide who will be the person, who is the main person in charge, who is the secretary, these things, right? When persons come to register non-profits, the information that they provide to the company's registry are who are the directors, who is the secretary. Any further internal organization, then organization structure is solely up to the persons running the nonprofit, right? They can have their bylaws, which is this is what the company or the organization will be governed by. However, when they're registering that company, we are concerned with who are the directors, who is the secretary. Yes, they can submit these documents if they want, as I said, in terms of the bylaws and stuff, but the main information that we look at are directors and secretary. As I said, they can have their board of directors, who are the persons, again, they will state their organization structure. So, right. So it's up to the persons themselves to appoint who they would have as the main director, the general manager, the managing director, that sort of thing. Also, with the amendment to the Companies Act that I mentioned before, there is a clause where persons now, when registering for this NPO registration, they have to state who is the controller of the company, right? And the Act gives the definition of the controller as a director of the company where the NPO is established as a non-profit. I just having a little bit of technical issues here with this thing sticking a bit. But yeah, so the controller now is the person who they will state for official reasons, who is the person in charge. That person now is the person who will be signing the documents at the company's registry for the non-profit, that sort of thing. That person is listed as the controller on the documents when they submit them to the company's registry.
Okay. Right. I have a question concerning the role of secretary. Because just today someone was asking about that, because I think when people hear the term secretary, they just think of it in the traditional sense,
Right.
of a secretary working in an office, right?
Yeah.
So as it pertains to the actual registration of a company, whether profit or non-profit, what exactly is the definition and role of a secretary in that sense?
Okay, so in terms of, all right, so I stated before that a company would have directors, right? The secretary is, I don't want to say that the secretary holds more authority in the company. However, let's say a company has to be struck off. That means that you're going to close the company, where you would need the signature of 2 directors to have that possible. You would need only the signature of the secretary alone, right? To be able to do certain things within the company, right? So basically, the secretary also, yes, is concerned with the day-to-day running of the company also. But in terms of when it comes to the company's registry, and let's say even with communicating with a company, let's say you have to send correspondence to a company, they are going to send the correspondence to the secretary as opposed to the directors in the company, right?
Okay.
Just.
All right. So thank you for clearing that up. So another question, are NPOs allowed to have persons on salary?
Yes, they can. Yeah, they can. Right? Because I mean, yes, it's a non-profit organization. Yes, there are no owners. However, there may be persons, not all roles in a non-profit company then are voluntary. Most of them, yes, are. However, there may be instances where persons are paid for their services within a non-profit company.
Okay. All right. So I know the amendments, or I'm assuming the amendments would have been put in place, as well as some of the other changes to bring about more accountability.
Yes.
Right? Because, you know, especially if someone is going and approaching other people for funding. So my question is there anything in place? So, okay, let's say I go and I request $100, right?
Right.
Towards a particular cause. But at the end of the day, the money that actually goes directly towards the cause is $5 out of that $100.
Right.
Is there anything in place to monitor that sort of thing? Because if, let's say, I am given $100 to a specific cause, I would want to know that as much of it as possible is going towards the issue. And I raise it because some big international organizations came under scrutiny for these type of practices.
All right. So what's with the amendment, right? There was a new form that was introduced, which is a questionnaire that each nonprofit organization has to fill out, whether you're not registering or you would have been registered before the date of this amendment, right? Which was in 2019. The effective date was the 14th of June 2019. So on this questionnaire now, a non-profits have to clearly state where they get their funds from and how the money is being spent. That document now is sent to the Financial Intelligence Unit, right? And from there, they will do their investigation. The most that the company will come to the registry, the company's registry to do is file the documents. Those documents are then forwarded to the FIU, and from there they will do whatever is necessary for them to ensure that what these people or the information that they provided is actually correct and so forth.
Okay, so if it is seen that things are not lining up, right? Does that organization now have authority, or what could be the penalties towards the NPO if things are not in accordance?
I am trying to pull up the act here, but as I said, I'm getting some a little bit of difficulty here to get the to read exactly what are the penalties.
Okay.
Yeah, let me see.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, in the meantime, yeah. No, I was going to say we have a next question that you could probably answer in the meantime, which is, can you explain about the registering of shareholders?
All right.
And I see you end of March. So I don't know if this is something specific to the companies, and it has some sort of deadline attached to it.
Yes, that is so. But Kevin, Mr. Lane will clearly explain that, right? That was another amendment that was made to the Companies Act also, right? And there is a deadline for the 31st of March, but he will be better able to explain that. It has to do with the beneficial owners of shares, right? So he will give you more information on that and explain that in a little bit more detail.
And that I think that's pertaining to the form 42 and 45.
42, 45, yeah, and well, 46 in some cases, yeah.
Okay.
Right. So I'm seeing here. Just so. This thing I was sticking. Right. So I'm seeing here the NPO is, if the NPO is found guilty of an offense under the Proceeds of Crime Act, Chapter 1127, Financial Intelligence Unit of Trinidad and Tobago, or any other written law by which recommendations are implemented. Oh, no. This is something different. But I'll have to get that, I'll find out exactly what are the penalties, right? But as I said, that Financial Intelligence Unit here is quoting from the Proceeds of Crime Act, Anti-Terrorism Act, and the different chapters. So yeah, I'll get that information and provide it.
Okay, so based on that, so I'm assuming then that that is sort of leaning towards people who may be using a non-profit organization to raise funds for things that are considered to be criminal activities, or to fund criminal activities.
Yeah, the offenses provisions. I'm also seeing here there's offenses. Are there any offenses for which the controller of the NPO may be held liable under the NPO Act and not yet in operation? Okay, so I'm seeing here, according to the document that I'm reading from, the question was asked because it's a frequently asked questions document, right? And they are asking, are there any offenses for which the controller of the MPO may be held liable for? And it states that the offenses, provisions under the NPO Act are not yet in operation. But this question was in relation to the controller of the NPO, right?
Okay.
So as I said, I'll get the information. I'll find out exactly where in the act it states it and what are the offenses and what how persons can be held liable, and I'll get that information to you.
Okay, great.
Right?
One more question.
Mhm.
If the directors change every year according to their constitution, how is this affected by the amendment?
With the amendment, there are new forms that they have introduced also where every change, if there are changes to the directors, those changes would have to be filed with the Ministry of Legal Affairs, right? So you have, and any organization, whether it's profit, non-profit, whether it's a business or a partnership, if there's a change to the owner, there's a change to the directors, the company's registry must be notified within 30 days of that change being made that there was a change, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And it looks like that brings us to the end of the questions we have so far. Right. So Claire says, thank you for answering her question. And if we, let's see, do we have any more questions based on what we would have discussed tonight with relation to non-profit? Okay, Miss Reggie says, thank you for a great presentation.
You're welcome, all.
All right. Okay, so I think that's it for the questions so far. Thank you very much, Leanne, for participating and sharing your knowledge with us. Right. We are definitely pleased to see these type of amendments being put in place, because I think you know, it could only help us move forward as a nation and as a people. Right? We should not be afraid of things that are being implemented for the sake of transparency, because our hope is that everyone who wants to do business, whether for profit or not for profit, is doing it for a good cause. And definitely, you know, you would be operating in operating with integrity. So thank you very much. All right. And what we will do now is we will just chat a little bit about our Jumpstart package that some of you would have seen introduced in the WhatsApp group, the Bringing Agriculture Home WhatsApp group. So what we have been doing, I mean, you know, we continue to look at the challenges people face with agriculture and how we can mitigate or how we can solve some of those issues. And one of the things we recognize is that depending on what you want to do, not everyone would have the necessary capital to just get started, right? And this is why we have been approaching financial institutions. The good news, I think, is that because of all that happened last year, more and more people are seeing and recognizing the need to promote agriculture. All right. So this is working in our favor. So the Jumpstart package has a value of $40,000. All right. And initially, the package, you know, we said food plus security equals food security. So with the primary package, you can get a system to grow food, right? That would be for you and your family, and you would have a surplus. You can choose to sell all of this produce, all right? And that could, the produce generated just from selling should be able to cover your installment and your expenses. Now, some people have also been inquiring as to, well, okay, let's say I really want the 40,000 value, but I don't necessarily want the things that were outlined in the initial package. Can there be adjustments? And the answer to that is yes. All right. So based on what it is your needs are, and when we say needs, this has to do with agriculture, right? So once the goal is to get started within agriculture, and you want to utilize the systems that we have, the CASA systems, then definitely adjustments can be made. So what we would need to do is really just have a conversation with you to see exactly what your goal or your intention is. Because some people have said, well, okay, I'm really just looking to get started. I want something that could make food for my family, right? If I could, generate some revenue from it, that is even better. But this is my goal. Some others have said, well, listen, I am really looking to make some money. I want to do something that could make a profit, right? So what we might recommend for the person who is looking to maximize on revenue generation is not necessarily the same thing we might recommend for somebody who is less concerned with making a profit, right? And then based on even the space that is available, all these different things we can take into consideration so that we could give you a recommendation that would be best suited for your needs. All right. So someone is asking if they can get some more info. Most definitely. And yes, I will place the link for the WhatsApp to join the WhatsApp group in the chat. Right. So we would have had quite a few people showing interest. So just to give you an update, we want to get as much as possible. Everyone who is interested, we want to get those applications in this week, right? If we could send all the information in together, that would make the process even easier. So as we would have mentioned, some of the things that would be needed, you must, of course, have proof of identity, right? You can't just come and say, well, I'm John Smith with no proof that you are indeed said person, right? You would need a proof of address. So this would be a bill either in your name, or if it is not in your name, you would have to get, of course, present the bill with a letter stating that you have permission to utilize or to use that address, right? You would also need a pay slip. You would need a job letter. And am I forgetting anything? The pay slip, the job letter, proof of address, proof of identity, right? You also would need 2 references. And the references, one could be family and one professional. So what you would need, we would need a number. We will need that person's address and, of course, their name. So for your references, we need their name, we need a contact number, and we need their address. All right. Somebody is asking, what if you are retired? That is a very good question, right? So if you are retired, I think in this instance, then instead of the pay slip, right, you can use your pension letter from NIS, right? And you could see the response to that in the chat. And I think this is a very good opportunity. So I encourage you all to really grab this. You know, the name of it is Jumpstart, because that is exactly what we want to do. We want to help people get a start, especially if the what might have been keeping you back is not having the necessary finances. So people have been requesting information from Trinidad. People have also been requesting information from Tobago. Well, you know, definitely our Grow Tobago initiative is ongoing, because we want to see how much we can boost productivity in Tobago, just as we are boosting productivity in Trinidad. Okay, so people have been asking. So as I said, this week we want to get in these applications, and what I can say is that the list is not a never-ending list. All right, at some point we basically have a target. So if you want to ensure that you are on the list and that you could take advantage of the opportunity, get your information onto us as quickly as possible. So what I'm going to do now, I'm putting our email in the chat. So that is Homegrown Solutions TT at yahoo.com, right? So all your documents, you can send the copies of them to us, Homegrown Solutions TT at yahoo.com. Also in the email, you can give us idea as to what your major goal is. If it is that you are more interested in just having production going and having the benefits of the security system and the security surveillance, let us know. If what you want to do is maximize on the profits and you are not necessarily interested in some of the other elements, also let us know, right? Because in any event, we would still want to get a little more information from you to ensure that what you get is, you know, the best suited combination for what your needs are. All right, so thank you very much for all the interest that you have shown so far. But to move the process forward, we need to get the information, the documentation in, so that we could send that out as quickly as possible. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to share the link for the WhatsApp group for those of you who have not yet joined our Bringing Agriculture Home group, right? That link was just shared in the chat. So I think for the rest of this month, we would be focusing a bit more on business in particular, because, you know, this is really one of our main focuses. I had an interesting conversation with someone, and this is why, you know, how we go about structuring ourselves is very important, because we are still, I would say, considered, all right, before I say that, does the system include the framework as shown in the picture? When you say framework, I am assuming you are talking about the actual structure. So the systems you would be getting is CASA systems. CASA has one quality standard and they maintain that standard, right? So the actual design would, of course, be based on what it is you want, but in terms of the quality and the structure, for those of you who would have seen a CASA system, that is exactly what you will expect, right? So I hope I answered. Great, yes, so I hope that answered your question. All right, so as it comes now to business, we in large part have a real small business type of mentality. And let me give an example. So let's say you want to get started in agriculture. All right. You might go along the road of getting a little bit of land, right? A small area to do a little small thing, as we would say. Now, you might now want to wholesale. So you have a little bit of land, you're doing a little thing, and you are wholesaling. But in wholesaling, you are trying to compete with people and with farms who are much larger than you, right? And because of their size, they are really able to benefit from the economies of scale, making it very difficult for you to earn a profit from your ventures, right? Now, this might seem as, something very simple, but it is a prevailing mindset. And a lot of people are getting frustrated. They're getting frustrated within the farming because they might feel, well, things just against them, not realizing that you made things extra difficult even going in. You understand? But this same type of approach is something that continues to be encouraged and continues to be shared. And if you look at the statistics, you would realize that by and large, the average farmer in Trinidad and Tobago is considered a small farmer, right? If micro farming is a term, many of them would also fall into that category, right? So you really are operating at a level where you have to pay the most for everything, but then you also have to sell what it is you grow for the least. So you will always hear us encouraging people, do a business plan, right? Do the research, look at the industry that you are getting into, look at what is available, right? Do not just listen to the people who have been doing this thing the same way over all these years, especially if the results are not the results that you are looking for. We cannot just continue to just to go along in the boat, not do anything different, complain, and expect to get a different result. There's lots of potential in the agriculture industry, but we have to do what needs to be done in order to get there. And this is why we would always encourage our farmers, our potential farmers, to join the business development group, so that apart from the farming practices, because we would want you to have good agriculture practices, right? To be doing things that are good for you, good for the land, good for your produce. All of these things would make it better for the consumer. But we also want to ensure that you have the knowledge to also take good care of your business, because the business is what will take care of you, right? So you are working hard to take care of your plants so that the consumer could get a good product. But if the business is not structured properly, what will be taking care of you, right? And we don't want somewhere down the road you just get frustrated and you say, well, look, agriculture is not working out. All right. So tonight we would have discussed non-profit organizations, NPOs. We would have still covered a little bit on the regular business and understanding the difference between like a sole trader, where you are the business, or a company where the company is a separate entity, and how it relates to liability. We would have also shared on our Jumpstart initiative. And again, I said, once you are interested, send in your documents so you can take advantage of this opportunity, right? So next week, God willing, we would be on again, and I'm hoping we could probably talk a bit about a business plan, right? Why a business plan is important, because not everybody even understands what a business plan is. Like I asked someone about a business plan, and what I received was really a list of needs. So for some persons, a business plan might mean, well, okay, well, I know I need these different things for the business. No, a business plan is much more than that. It doesn't just show you the things you need to buy for your business, right? Ideally, your business plan should validate if it makes sense moving forward with the business, because it shows you how the business is going to turn over the revenue, right? Would this business, would what I'm doing make enough money to sustain the business? In doing the plan, you might realize, okay, I might need to make some adjustments, right? Some of the assumptions that I had were actually wrong, right? So having a business plan is also very important. So next week, I'm hoping we could touch a bit on that, right? Someone is saying a feasibility study is also an integral part of a business plan. Yes. All right. So there are many, many elements, especially if you want to approach a financial institution, you want to approach an investor. They want to know that you did your homework, right? And not that you just get up one day with an idea and you decide, hey, I want to start a business. All right. So folks, yes, Miss Reggie says your business plan is your roadmap to success. It should help you to see, don't do fake figures just to get a loan. All right. Okay, folks. So God willing, next week we would touch a bit more on business plans. So everyone have a great week. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Continue to be safe. Continue to observe the necessary health protocol. As we said, continue to look out for one another, right? Look out for your children. Look out for your loved ones. And even as we all work hard in the pursuit of success and the life we would like to have, let us not forget to take care of ourselves. So just as you would take care of your plants with your agriculture, you need to be taken care of as well. All right. So good night to everyone. Thank you for joining and have a great week.